Here is Clark off the screen, launches, and drops a triple. But these Mercury gold medalists...
CaitlinClark had an epic return to WNBA action. She didn't just play a game. She rewrote the history books. Against the legendary Diana Taurasi and the Phoenix Mercury, Clark put up an impressive 29 points, 10 assists, and 5 rebounds. But here's the kicker. She didn't just win the game. She completely changed the landscape of the Rookie of the Year race and possibly the entire playoff picture. She's trying to prove she's not here to play games. This performance wasn't just good, it was historic. But trust me, this game had more twists and turns than you can imagine. The return of the WNBA after the Olympic break was already cause for great anticipation. But when we found out we'd have CaitlinClark facing off against Diana Taurasi, the hype reached stratospheric levels. On one side, we had the rookie sensation, the prodigy who's been revolutionizing college basketball and now the WNBA. On the other, the living legend, the icon of women's basketball. But it wasn't just an individual duel. The Indiana Fever are in a desperate race for the playoffs, while Taurasi's Phoenix Mercury are fighting to maintain their position. Every game is crucial in this final stretch of the season, and this matchup had the potential to change the course for both teams. And of course, we can't forget the extra element, the fierce competition for Rookie of the Year between Clark and Angel Reese. Every performance is now scrutinized, every statistic compared. Clark knew that a stellar performance against a Taurasi-led team could be the difference-maker in this race. The stage was set, expectations were sky-high. No one could predict what was about to unfold, but everyone knew we were about to witness something special. The game started, and, my friends, the Indiana Fever came to make a statement. It was a dominating start, the kind that makes the opposing fans squirm in their seats. In the first quarter, the Fever simply ran over the Mercury, opening up a 33-16 lead. Yeah, you heard that right, a 17-point difference. CaitlinClark was on fire. She finished the first period with an impressive 16 points, 5 assists, and 4 rebounds. But it wasn't a solo show. Kelsey Mitchell was the perfect complement. The chemistry between Clark and Mitchell was insane, with the two finding each other on the court, as if they'd been playing together for years. The dominance continued in the second quarter. The Fever opened up a 28-point lead, leaving the Mercury completely stunned. The defense was solid, the offense was flowing, and it looked like we were watching a Fever shooting drill. Meanwhile, Diana Taurasi and the Mercury seemed to have no answers. The legendary player was clearly frustrated with the situation. The halftime score, a convincing 54-37 for the Fever. Coach Christy Sides seemed to have found the perfect formula. The game plan was working to perfection, with Clark orchestrating the offense and the defense suffocating the Mercury's main weapons. At that moment, it looked like the Fever were on their way to an easy and dominant victory. But as we know, basketball is a game of runs, and what was about to come in the second half would catch many by surprise. The Mercury didn't get where they are by being a team that gives up easily. The third quarter started, and suddenly it felt like we were watching a completely different game. The Mercury started to chip away at the Fever's lead alarmingly. The comfortable 17-point advantage began to melt like ice in the Arizona sun. Christy Sides suddenly found herself facing a tactical nightmare. What had worked perfectly before now seemed to be falling apart. The defense that was impenetrable in the first half now had more holes. The fluid offense turned into a series of lost possessions and forced shots. The Mercury won the third quarter 28-19, cutting the difference to just 8 points. The pressure was mounting, and you could see the frustration on the faces of the Fever players. It was at this moment that we saw Kelsey Mitchell involved in a heated discussion, showing that the tension was reaching critical levels. Sides tried everything: timeouts, rotation changes, defensive adjustments, but it seemed like nothing was working. The momentum had completely shifted, and the specter of a humiliating defeat after such a promising start began to haunt the Fever. This was the moment when Sides' experience as a coach would be put to the test. How was she going to regroup her team? How was she going to contain the Mercury's advance led by Taurasi? And more importantly, how was she going to use her main weapons, Clark and Mitchell, to secure the win? The fourth quarter was approaching, and it was clear that this game would be decided in the final minutes. Sides knew that her decisions in the next moments could define not just the outcome of the game, but potentially the fate of the Fever's season. When all seemed lost, when the momentum was totally in favor of the Mercury, That's when CaitlinClark and Kelsey Mitchell decided to show why they're considered one of the most dangerous duos in the WNBA. In the fourth quarter, Clark and Mitchell took total control of the game. Clark, showing maturity far beyond her years, began to dictate the pace of the game. She alternated between distributing precise assists and hitting shots that drove the crowd crazy. But the real star of the final quarter was Kelsey Mitchell. She simply caught fire. Mitchell hit 2 3-pointers that were absolutely crucial. Clark and Mitchell seemed to know exactly where the other would be on the court at all times. When the Mercury focused on stopping Clark, Mitchell appeared free for the shot. When they doubled on Mitchell, Clark found spaces to create. This was the moment when it became clear why the Fever are so dangerous. It's not just the CaitlinClark show. It's the lethal combination of Clark and Mitchell that makes this team so hard to defend. In the end, the 98-89 score for the Fever doesn't tell the whole story. It doesn't show how the game was on a knife's edge, how the Mercury came dangerously close to completing a historic comeback, but it shows that when the pressure is highest, Clark and Mitchell are ready to respond. This Fever victory over the Mercury wasn't just another game in the regular season. No, my friends, this was one of those moments that can define a team's destiny. With this result, the Fever took a giant step towards the playoffs, something few believed possible at the start of the season. Let's put it in perspective. The Fever now have a 12-15